and you only have a few shopping days left, so get it done. We're almost there. Ms. Burner,
Do it local. It takes less time.
Right, it's true. Very good. Good point. Local shopping will save you fuel and all the good stuff's in town. Good tip there, Miss Eagles or Miss Nowakowski. So, Miss Burner, if you would call the roll, please.
Sure. Mayor Lowry.
Here.
Councilman Grimm.
I'm here.
Councilman Rodwald.
Here.
Councilman Nowakowski.
Here.
Councilman Cobb.
Here.
Councilwoman Eggleston.
Here.
Vice Mayor Cook.
Here.
7 members present.
Thank you very much. And tonight's invocation will be by Vice Mayor Cook.
If you will, bow your heads. Our Father, please bless all of us as we try to do the business to the city for which we have sworn an obligation. Please protect our first responders, the folks that are attempting to help us to get over this COVID-19, protect our armed forces overseas, and bless all of our citizens. Thank you, Lord.
Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. And moving on to the pledge. Let's see, Mr. Grimm has our flag as usual. Thank you, sir. All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Flag.
of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it
stands
Stands
one
one
nation
nation
under God,
God,
Indivisible.
liberty.
Liberty.
for all.
justice
Justice
for all.
for all.
Wow, that one was,
That was probably the worst one yet.
I would agree. That was Dan. I was looking at you. Not to
I
smile,
understand.
and you just. It was we get an A for effort. So, all right, thank you. So, anyways, moving on to action on minutes, none. Communications, none. City managers report, none. Mr. Bridge, how's the computer over there for the comments from the public?
Let me get her going here.
Let the tubes warm up.
Yep, we have one that came in on Wednesday, 12/16, and it is from a Sherry Oberhauser. And it just says, hello, does New Carlisle require any pre-sale inspections? So I'm assuming that it has to be for homes, and the answer to that is no. We do not require those.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
All right. And let's see here. Comments from committee reports, none. Resolutions, none. Ordinances, none. Other business, legislation discussion for the city. Mr. Bridge.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of public, members of administrative staff, and the citizens and business owners, of course. So what we have on the agenda tonight for our town hall / regular meeting, we have the resolution 2020-26R that will be introduced, public hearing and action tonight. And that is a resolution amending resolution 19-19R, the capital improvement program for the city of New Carlisle, Ohio, for additional capital purchases. And what that is since we have to take down the water tower and council voted to do that, we have to go back and amend the CIP to account for that in the water department. So the only section of the CIP that we'll be looking at tonight would be the water department for that removal of Adams Tower. For the ordinances, we got, I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have ordinance 2020-45. That's public hearing and action tonight. It was introduced at the last meeting in this first meeting in December on the 7th. That is an ordinance authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract for the purchase of water softening rock salt. We also have ordinance 2020-47. That's introduction tonight. Public hearing and action will be on January 4th, 2021. And that is an ordinance amending chapter 240 of the Citizen Participation Plan and chapter 246, employees generally of the codified ordinances of the city of New Carlisle for the purpose of adopting a non-discrimination provision for city employees of the city of New Carlisle. And that was on about 3 months ago. It did not pass. And then Councilwoman Eggleston Nowakowski had requested, Peggy Eggleston had requested that come back to us today. And we also have ordinance 2020-48. That is an ordinance authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with Clark County Sheriff's Office for fire and EMS dispatching services. We also have ordinance 2020-49E. That is introduction, public hearing, and action tonight. That is an ordinance authorizing the expenditure of funds over $20,000 and enter into an agreement for the demolition of Adams Street Water Tower and declaring emergency. And then the last one up for tonight is Ordinance 2020-50E. That is also introduced, public hearing and action tonight. That is an ordinance amending Ordinance 2020-46E for the purpose of authorizing the city manager to enter into a revised contract with the sheriff of Clark County, Ohio for police protection within the city limits of New Carlisle, Ohio, and declaring an emergency. And if I can have a moment to explain that one, that actually was introduced at the meeting, first meeting in December on the 7th. After final review, it was determined that there's two not to exceed amounts in the actual contract. That not to exceed amount came from the amount that was being charged for depreciation. They had calculated it as every 5 deputy would be renting a car essentially, but we only have one. So I did have them go back and change that dollar amount. But unfortunately, we do have 2 conflicting dollar amounts in there. One with the amended cost and then one with the original cost. So we do have to put that back in front of council tonight just to clear up any loose ends. That's all for the legislation tonight. Be happy to entertain any questions or discussions on those.
All right, thank you, sir. Council, any questions or discussions on any of those topics? I'll make sure, I think I saw Mr. Cook first, or Mr. Cobb, I'm sorry, Mr. Cobb.
Mr. Bridge,
Mm-hmm.
on the one for the I'm having trouble thinking that.
The dispatching agreement, sir?
No. This has got to do with the other one that fell 3 months ago.
Oh, the non-discrimination?
Right. On the bottom half of that was added in there, that is infringement on the First Amendment, which states I can come home and go to my email, Facebook, as long as it's not a city email, and print whatever I want to and say whatever I want to. I've talked to the state attorney general about that, talked to his office.
Mm-hmm.
And I've talked to 2 attorneys. What we're going to end up doing is we're going to be real close to coming into a lawsuit.
Mm-hmm.
The same way with the city employees. They can go home. They're not, they can go home and get on their Facebook email, say whatever they want to say. I just want to address that. That's the First Amendment's being revoked there.
Well, can I jump in? My 2 cents on this is, and I understand what you're saying, Mr. Cook, is in my opinion. And
No, it's Mr. Cobb.
Mr. Cobb, I'm sorry. It's the last meeting of the year. I apologize. Mr. Cobb. I mean, we see this all the time in other businesses, and you see it a lot on like at more of a corporate level, whether you see it with football teams or sports teams or other places of employment where, people's actions outside of the role of their employment, even if they're off the clock, an employer can choose to let that person go for their behavior. I mean, because they don't want their installation to be, affiliated with someone who, and I'm just saying, for example, who may put out some sort of hate speech or some sort of really nasty, thoughts or opinions or whatever it may be. I know in places I've worked in the past, I mean, they may not say that we'll fire you if you go and put something that we don't like on social media, but I mean, they definitely watch that stuff and you can be held accountable for it.
Well, you are treading on the First Amendment. That's what you got to be careful with. And as far as council goes, we are elected officials. We are not city employees.
Correct.
And I think you are making a mistake by adding that last paragraph.
Okay.
Because when it comes right down to it, somebody can turn around and file a lawsuit against the city of New Carlisle, city manager, the mayor.
Anyone else have any comments on this? Mr. Bridge?
That actually has been in our codes for quite some time. So we're just adding discrimination to include sexual orientation and stuff like that. I'm going to pull this back up just so I have it in front of me real quick. So the last sentence reads, Employees must never use the internet, electronic city mail, or online services to disseminate offensive, harassing, vulgar, obscene, or threatening statements, including disparagement of others based on their race, national origin, sex, sexual orientation, age, marital status, pregnancy, disability, religious beliefs, color, creed, religion, national. So sexual preference, stuff like that. Anything in italicized is what we're adding. So that actually has been in our codes, and I don't know for how long, but well prior to the non-discrimination stuff coming into play. So it's not like we're adding that brand new. We're just amending what was already there. But I will remind council that this has been approved by our legal department. And Mayor Lowry is correct. Anytime that you are employed by a municipality or anyone, and it doesn't go in line with their values, core values, you are able to go forward with discipline on that. We have not had any issues with that in the past. But again, I just wanted to reiterate that all we're doing is amending a section that's already been in place.
Yeah, I was trying to think of some examples, and I can only think of one. I mean, this is a much bigger scale, but like I remember not long ago in NASCAR, one of the drivers had said some language that wasn't, used some words that were very inappropriate, and they kicked him right out. I mean, and I would imagine if he could have filed a suit for something like that, I would imagine he would have done so. I mean, I think as an employer, they have the right to do that. When you cross that actual line that is completely blatantly obvious, like if you were to make the statement, that I want to cause serious harm to all city employees, or something really radical that's out there. I mean, I don't think that that's a problem. I mean, if I had a company and someone was doing that, I wouldn't want them working for me. I think it's just that simple.
Just because everybody else does it doesn't mean it's right.
It sets precedent. And once you set precedent, you're
Just because everybody else does it doesn't make it right.
All right. Anyone else on this topic? I'm bouncing between two screens. So if I'm Mr. Vice Mayor, I think I saw you with your hand up.
In a sense, I looked this over, and I also have a problem with the infringement on the First Amendment rights. And I'm not sure whether our law director really took this into play. I guess I'm real hesitant about adding this.
Again, I just want to reiterate, this has been on the books for quite some time. We're just amending a section. Jake's reviewed this multiple times. Our previous law director reviewed this multiple times. And people also tend to forget First Amendment right only extends to your fingertip. Once it becomes offensive to other people, it is no longer a right. That is a law. That is a policy that you're breaking. We should have in place what we've been trying to get for multiple years now is a non-discrimination policy in place that's going to protect everyone that works in the city of New Carlisle.
If it's offensive to anyone.
Yeah, exactly. As an employer, why do you think Nike does not do business with corporations that don't, play well with the general public or the general outlook? If I have an employee that has very skewed viewpoints on a high profile topic and it's not good for the culture of our organization, we have every right to protect that culture. We have not had a single issue with it yet. And I just want to reiterate, this is something that we are amending. So your concerns about on the infringement of the first protection right, this has been in our policy for a very long time. All we're doing is amending it to add some more things to it.
Anybody can say, hey, I'm offended by that statement, whether it is actually offensive or not.
We are a public organization, Mr. Grimm. We are not a private corporation. So when you operate as a public organization, you kind of have to do things a little bit differently than private organizations do. Because the flip side of this is, if you don't pass it and someone doesn't get hired here, could they turn around and sue us because we didn't offer that particular person protection? So I understand it's a high controversial thing, and I'm going to take myself out of it. I'll explain it as much as I can, but this has already been reviewed by our law department. And again, we're just amending a section that's been on the books for quite some time.
Well, let me just just a step further, and if you think about it, also there's similar, and it's not worded exactly, but in the charter for council members, there's something in there. It's kind of the same lines. It says, for a council member that would conduct misconduct could be removed. So what is misconduct? What I say is misconduct, or what Mr. Roadwall sees misconduct, could be two different things. If I go out there and spew a bunch of hate onto social media, would that be freedom of speech, or is that misconduct? So, I mean, it's it can be interpreted, from different angles from different people. But I still think the city has every right to protect itself from people who have very dangerous viewpoints, or whatever the situation may be, if it was to ever come up. And I don't think it has, according to Mr. Bridges said. So, anyone else? Okay, I don't see any hands. I think we're good. All right. Any other discussion on any of the other topics Mr. Bridges went over tonight for the regular council meeting? There's a quiet group tonight. Okay. I'm sorry.
All the energy for the town hall.
Yeah, no, I'm going back and forth, making sure I'm not missing somebody raising their hand. So, Mr. Vice Mayor, I think you have your hand up.
I thought we were going to address the resident or non-resident pool pricing tonight.
I have that on the city manager report, sir.
Mhm.
In other words, you don't want to discuss it in the work session?
Now, that's up for council. It's not my meeting, but it is addressed on the city manager report.
Yeah, I mean, that's up to you, Mr. Vice Mayor. If you have comments, or by all means, you're welcome to do so, sir.
Well, let me ask a dumb question. Did we ever get a figure on how much money we have spent on that pool over the past years
We're
from
still
the
waiting.
general fund?
We're still waiting on that. I have not addressed that with Ms. Harris, as we talked about over the phone. Right now, we're shorthanded in the finance department due to COVID, and it's year end. So that's why we had put a lot of this off till after the first of the year. We just started the compiling for the area rates. But Ms. Harris needs to get into this computer system to do that. And right now, we are focusing on closing the year end out.
Anything else, Mr. Vice Mayor?
No, at this point, I think I better shut up.
Okay.
Oh, you're on a roll.
Anything else?
I have something I would like to bring up to point to January.
Ms. Nowakowski, have at it.
At the first meeting in January, we have over 20 committee and board positions that need to be refilled. Over 20. We need to be doing some serious talking and working on how we're going to build some support for all of these committees in this community. I was thinking about figuring out a way that as individual council people, we could get together groups of people and have a council person, community discussion on the positions that need to be filled and the importance of having the community members in those positions, to try to recruit people to do this. It's important. I have spent my week working my way through the entire charter. And if you haven't done that and you want something to get you crazy and put you to sleep at the same time, I recommend that you just open up the charter and start at the beginning.
Mr. Bridge, or I don't know if this is kind of probably a big question. Do you know if, like, all the boards that we have, the ones that we are required to have people on them by law. I mean, are those taken care of? I mean, like,
No.
the planning and zoning and whatnot.
Let me pull up my record sheet. Though
'Cause
I value Mrs. Eggleston Noakowski's concern. We had a discussion on this yesterday. So our two main boards are BZA and Planning Board. There's one vacancy on the Board of Zoning Appeals. The Planning Board has two vacancies. We've had one for a few months, and then Ms. Ratteri just resigned, I think, last month or the month before that. We have a Human Rights Board that has always just had the city manager and whatever mayor happens to be at the time. Other than that, it has 3 vacancies, but it's never met. Parks and Rec Board right now, they are, there's one vacancy on Parks and Rec Board. I don't think we ever got a formal resignation from Mr. Nash. So you still got 3 there. The Volunteer Firefighter Dependent Fund Board, that is a state mandated board that gets renewed every year. So that will be the council here coming soon. You have 1 vacancy on your Tax Review Board. That's been vacant for as long as I've been here. And then you have the Civil Service Commission, which by our charter definition does not meet for anything because it's only if we had a police force. So there are some vacancies on like the main board, the Planning Board and BZA. But the subsequent boards, like the Volunteer Firefighters Dependent Fund Board, that is something that the state mails us out when we set it to council. You guys elect people. They never meet. They never met in the 5 years I've been city manager, or I don't think they've ever met 2 years prior to that. Fire chief would be a good person on that. So there are some vacancies. Ms. Eggleston is correct. Those are something that council needs to get together and find out. We can blast it on Facebook, but people don't volunteer like they did back in the day. I don't know if it's just the era we're in. I don't know if it's just everyone's just busy. The BZA and the Planning Board are the 2 big ones that we should definitely get someone in for.
And next year is a mandatory
Charter
revision.
Mhm.
Was you finished, Ms. Nowakowski? I see Mr.
Yeah.
Cobb. Okay, Mr. Cobb, go ahead.
Mr. Cook and I have been trying to get people on the
Mhm.
charter review. Nobody wants to be involved in it. All they want to do is sit back and complain what this city's doing, but nobody wants to jump in there and try to make changes. And like Mr. Bridge says, people just don't want to volunteer.
It's tough. And now we got Fire Chief back. Fire Chief, have you, in your recollection, as the Volunteer Firefighter Dependent Fund Board that we do every year, has that actually ever met? I mean, they're not required to unless they.
No, it's basically a paper to fill their block, basically.
Mhm.
Years ago, it came from years and years ago when you had mainly all volunteer departments, and because it's named Volunteer Fire Department. And as you said, the day of the volunteer is gone.
Mm-hmm. And I talked to Mr. Cook about it, Vice Mayor Cook and Mr. Cobb and some other council members. It's just people.
Well, I remember, I don't know if I talked to you about it, Mr. Bridge, but, I remember, way a handful of years before I was even on council, I asked, they were looking for someone to be on the Human Rights Board. I think it was like 2008. And they told me, said, okay, we're going to appoint you, but you'll never do anything with it. And they're right. I mean, once I was appointed, that was the last thing I heard about it. So, Mr. Grimm, did you have something? I thought I saw your hand up.
Mr. Cobb stole my thunder.
No,
Sorry.
Could we get a list of committees, of vacancies on committees, so we can start?
Yep. Where's my council notes? I do that. I can keep up with it.
Or I can forward my list that you sent me.
And council had voted last year to have a charter review committee, but apparently nobody ever volunteered.
Mm-hmm. Oh. And that's a good one to be on because it really shapes. It does shape a lot of things that move them forward in the city if they want to change, or transition in the wards or how council performs. I mean, it does things. I mean, that's a very important one to be on.
Yeah, definitely.
So what happens if we can't get anybody to get on it? Are we in violation of the charter?
Council has sole authority at that point in time.
At that point, from what I understand, council can go through the charter, make our changes and submit them to the voters, just like it would be if we had a charter review. The charter review makes recommendations to council. They in turn have to submit them to the voters. All we would be doing would be just going ahead without the citizen participation.
All right. Ms. Nowakowski, anything else on that topic?
I mean, I just think that we need to be thinking about how we can better engage. We've got all through that charter, there's the newspaper of wide distribution, and we have no newspaper period at all that is of wide distribution.
General distribution.
General distribution. Yeah. How many people get a newspaper anymore? Very few. We need to think about on that charter, getting that changed so that we can use other kinds of media. Maybe it's email distribution and we get everybody when they do their tax form or something to put their email on there for emergency contact. And if it's something that they need to know about the city, we can send them an email. I mean, we just need to think about how we can connect with the people in this community.
Well,
Well,
I think social media has become the newspaper of the age. So whether it's, I mean, we've done a good job with, getting our Facebook page out there. I mean, you can, like the old saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. We can give them all the tools they need, but they have to take that final step.
Yep. All right, Mr. Bridge, sir.
Another thing with that too is, I mean, the state of Ohio kind of needs to get with the ball too, because I like Linda's idea about having a subsequent list we can directly, but right now the state still mandates to publish in a paper of general circulation. And those legal ads get super expensive. I know when we had the local newspaper, I mean, that's why we like doing legal ads with them, because it was a lot more affordable. But the state requirements are kind of getting antiquated in today's age of social medias, of internets. I really hope they go and do that. But I do like the idea of the subsequent stuff, as far as a blast email list or something. That's a good idea.
Maybe we need to get one of our state representatives into council to talk about this, since it's going to need to be somehow dealt with in the charter if we're going to do it.
The legislature a few years back wanted to eliminate the newspaper requirement, but the American Newspaper Association, it's a newspaper trade group that lobbied to keep it in there. So now it's in a newspaper and on the newspaper's website.
Thank you, Mr. Grimm. Ms. Nowakowski, anything else?
No, we just need to start thinking about this very seriously, since we need to get that committee in January. It's supposed to be appointed in January.
This may,
All right, Mr.
Mr.
Vice
Mayor.
Mayor.
Go.
I saw Mr. Vice Mayor first.
I like Linda's idea. However, until I think this coronavirus situation has calmed down to a slow roll, I think we're going to be fighting an uphill battle. I think the Zoom meetings are great. I don't think that in having done myself many of the charter review committees, I don't think that really the Zoom type of a meeting for the charter review would work. But I think that once we get this coronavirus out of the way, that possibly this is going to be something maybe we could work on. But I'm looking myself that we're going to be probably into June or July if this vaccine puts a stop to this virus.
Thank you, Mr. Vice
Fire
Mayor.
coming out
Graham,
of
did you
your-
have anything else? Mr. Graham, did you have something?
Yeah, we have water bills that go out to the every resident every month.
Good point.
This may be a question for Casey. Do we have the capability that people can sign up for a city email list? That way the city can send out emails to the public about important stuff.
I'm going to defer that question to Randy.
Thank you, Casey. That's something we can definitely look into. There's all sorts of stuff we can get. The company that we signed on for our planning and zoning department, and now for our capital asset tracking, and then also some software for Howie's departments for workflow management. I've been getting actually junk email from them. They do a new service. It's like text, where your citizens base can send up for the text messaging. I always kind of put it to the side, but I think maybe when I get back after the first of the year, if I have time to do it this week, I'm actually going to inquire about that and then see what the costs are, because that's really what it's moving in toward nowadays is instant. You know, even though a lot of people have email on their phone, the text message is something that's a lot more quicker to get to. But we can definitely have some things to present if council's interested in doing some sort of mass communication with your residents.
I think it's worth looking into.
I agree.
Can I have a motion? We have to go back in the regular session
Yeah.
if all council wants to do that. Yeah, I have no problem with that. Good idea.
Thank you, Mr. Graham. Thank you, Mr. Bridge. Mr. Cobb, did you have something?
Well,
That down.
there's another virus coming out of Europe. And they say it's worse than this one here. Because right now, all the European countries are restricting flights out of Canada, US, and everybody else. So, you know, that's something else you got to look at too.
I mean, it's a mutated strain. It's much more contagious than the original strain. But Moderna put out a statement today thinking that they think their vaccine will be producing the same protein that will fight off the new strain of the COVID virus. It's a mutated strain. So.
Thank you, Mr. Roodwell. Anyone else? Any other topics? Real quick, I just wanted to say thank you to Mr. Vice Mayor. We was lucky enough to get a couple minutes together and go to Enon and sit in on one of their legal proceedings with the magistrate. And it was, I mean, they only had 2 cases there that night. A couple no-shows, I think, but it was really interesting to watch. It was, I would suggest if anybody has time to go over, maybe check one out. I know it's busy during the holidays, but maybe once the new year comes around and you have nothing to do, it was very informative. Go ahead, Mr. Vice Mayor.
The Enon magistrate is holding court. I believe it's the first and third Thursdays of every month. And I believe that I probably can speak for Mike and say that we both were very impressed with both the clerk and the magistrate. I'll be very honest with you, that magistrate was a very knowledgeable gentleman about the laws, ways to possibly save the city money on possibly incarceration of the offenders. Just a very top class operation.
It was. They do a good job. So, all right, Mr. Cobb.
Mr. Bridge, can I ask you a question, please?
Absolutely, sir.
Do you have any idea what we've lost as for the long time cases that have not been taken into court yet?
I'm in regards to what?
The extended length of time of citations that the county has not taken to court.
As far as like property violation?
Well, whatever we've issued citations on, properties.
We haven't. Yeah, we haven't, we started the inquiring process with them, and due to us being classified as a city, they would make that our responsibility to enforce that ourselves. So that's why when I was talking to the mayor and vice mayor about the possibility of a mayor's court, we can actually cite our violators into our own personal mayor's court, which in return would be more money for us in the long run. But, and Derek can chime in anytime he feels warranted, but they don't want to hear any of our cases per se.
Well, this is what I'm trying to say. What have we lost? That and the timeline, how many of them are too old? You know.
Yeah, the statute of limitations, like we would just have to reissue a violation. Say if there was something from like 3-4 months ago, and then we couldn't, they didn't fix it off their own violation, and we're still seeking a remedy, whether that be a civil fine or a court date or a combination of both. We would just have to issue another violation with the current date on it, and that's fine. We can do that as long as they have not corrected the problem. If they have attempted to correct it, then we go inspect it and make sure it's to our liking and of a workmanlike manner. And then at that point in time, we can have them fix it more. If they don't comply with that, then we can issue a violation off that. But with the mayor's court, we'll be able to keep all that in-house.
Yeah, but what I think we ought to go ahead and just go with the magistrate. Don't get the mayor involved. I mean, I seen one time when the mayor's dad was involved in a case when they had mayor court, and they threatened to do some harm to him.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So, you know, let's just bring a magistrate in and let the magistrate handle it, and a clerk. And as far as deputies goes, you know, we can always, whatever we got to do. But I don't think we should put the mayor in that situation.
Oh, I agree with you 100%. And the council will be able to make that determination. You guys will sit there and say, okay, what type of court do we want to do? Do we want us to do basic moving violations? Do we want to do OVIs? Do you want to have a magistrate or not? So that's a decision that you 7 will make. And I agree with you 100%. If I were Mr. Mayor, I would want absolutely nothing to do with that.
Nope. Well, even if you got a magistrate, you can bring in your OVIs, your drugs, all that. Yep. And that's more money coming to the city.
Oh, absolutely. That's court costs that we'll be able to retain now, an actual fine for the violation itself. And that's encompassing. That's our moving violations. That's our, like we've been discussing, but it's also our tax cases. We'll be able to put people who are behind on their taxes into our court. So when you look at it, and I got some data I'm compiling for you guys, along with some other data regarding the pool stuff. It financially is an absolute no-brainer, to be honest with you.
I got another question while we're at it too. What would be the chance of having a survey done once Madison Street School is down, or going to the Westlake Elementary and see if the school would let us put a pool in there? And then if we could have the ground to do it, is see if the citizens would support a bond to pay for it.
Well, that's again all up to council. So what we're going to be bringing to you guys after the first of the year is we're going to ask you guys how you want to proceed with this feasibility study. If we do it in-house, it's not going to be the best. There's professional companies out there that do these. They'll look at every angle possible, where your population base is, where's the best location, what size you need for the size of town you have. And I think if council's going to use this feasibility study to determine the future of the pool, I think it's definitely something you guys might want some professionals to do. But we have been focusing on the CARES Act purchases and the CARES Act deadlines. And I know there's multiple big ticket items we're researching for you guys, but that's been our primarily focus for the month of December. And that's why I kept on saying, after the first of the year, we're gonna bring some more things back to you guys. And this is definitely one of them, that feasibility study. So just to reiterate again, such an important document like that council is going to be using to make a decision that's going to be permanent for quite some time. I think we should look at companies come in and seeing what their professional opinion of it on, opposed to just us amateurs.
Thank you, Mr. Ridge. Anything else, Mr. Cobb?
Oh, I'm done.
All right, thank you, sir. Anyone else? Any other topics for the work session?
I was going to add in with Mr. Cook and Randy, I contacted all of the municipalities in Clark County who have magistrates or mayor's courts. And Enon and South Charleston were the only ones who were kind enough to respond. And I got the same impression talking to South Charleston in terms of the value to the city. And I went and read through all of the state stuff on it, and I think it's an absolutely think it's a no-brainer. And those people in those other communities are more than willing to help us get there.
Mhm.
You know, if their cooperation was unbelievable to me.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Nowakowski. Anyone else? All right. Looks like that is it. So if nothing else, we will need a motion.
Motion adjourned.
Second.
Second.
First by Mr. Cobb, a second by Mr. Grimm to adjourn.
Okay. Councilman Rodwell,
You're muted, Dan.
Yes.
Councilwoman Noakowski,
Yes.
Councilman Cobb.
Yeah.
Councilwoman Eggleston,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Cook,
Yes.
Mayor Lowry,
Yes.
Councilman Grimm.
Yes.
Motion to adjourn accepted 7-0.
All
See
right.
y'all in
Have a good evening. We'll see you at 7.
See you in a little bit.
Mhm.